Chapter 1, The Lockout. It started with a badge error. I tapped my card against the glass panel like I did every morning, same timing, same rhythm, half awake and holding coffee in the other hand. But this time, the scanner blinked red. "Try again," the security guard said without looking up. So I did. 3 more times. Still red. Then he looked up. Really looked. His eyebrows pulled together. "Hold tight," he said, already reaching for his radio. I didn't panic. Not then. Badge malfunctions happened, systems got glitchy after an update, IT forgot to sync credentials. No big deal. I stepped aside and waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. And that's when 2 internal security staff appeared, not building security, but our actual company guys, the ones in navy jackets with the Innova Tech logo stitched over the heart. "Mr. Dawson?" one of them asked. "We need to speak with you." Something in his tone changed the air. No smile. No explanation. No small talk. My heart started ticking a little faster. "Of course," I said carefully, straightening my posture. "But what's going on?" "We've been instructed to escort you off the premises until further notice." That's when it hit me, this wasn't a glitch. They didn't let me go to my desk. Didn't let me gather my things. Didn't say who gave the order. Just a cold, clean walk past rows of glass offices, people turning their heads, pretending not to stare. I saw 3 coworkers exchange looks when they saw me. One even whispered something. My ears burned. My face was hot. Outside, the sun was too bright. My coffee was still warm, but it tasted wrong. I stood there on the sidewalk, holding it like an idiot, staring up at the building where I'd spent the last 5 years building everything I had. I checked my phone. My email? Locked out. My company Slack? Deactivated. Still no explanation. Just silence. And in that silence, one thought cut through. Someone set me up. Chapter 2, The Accusation. The call came just after 2 p.m. Blocked number. Voice like gravel wrapped in ice. "Mr. Dawson, this is Deborah Marlin from HR Compliance. You're currently on administrative leave pending internal review. We need to schedule a formal interview regarding your digital access activity logged on May 8th. My grip on the phone tightened. Access activity? There was a breach into the secure analytics environment. Your login credentials were used to access and attempt to export confidential data. Specifically, proprietary performance metrics and internal forecasting models. There were also unauthorized attempts to enter the board's financial archive." I blinked. "That's not possible. I haven't even." "This will be addressed during the scheduled review. Legal representation will be present." "Wait, hold on, are you saying I'm under investigation?" "I'm saying we have a protocol, Mr. Dawson, and you are currently part of it." Click. The call ended without a goodbye. I stared at my reflection in the blank TV screen across the room. My apartment felt smaller suddenly. The walls closer. Tighter. I paced the room, replaying every project I'd worked on that week. Every meeting, every email, every line of code I'd touched. Nothing stood out. Nothing risky. Nothing out of bounds. And yet, someone had used my name. Someone had accessed the deepest layer of our data environment and made it look like it was me. The thought alone made my stomach turn. We all knew how seriously Innova Tech guarded its IP. It wasn't just about security. It was about reputation, investor confidence, legal integrity. A data breach like this wasn't just a red flag, it was a death sentence for a career. And no one called to ask me what happened. No one asked if I'd been near a terminal that day. No one even gave me the benefit of the doubt. Because someone had already shaped the story. And they'd done it well. If the login log showed my name, it would take more than a denial to undo it. It would take proof, hard proof, and leverage I didn't have. I knew what this meant. The silence from my team. The coldness in Deborah's voice. They weren't investigating. They were already preparing the fallout. They weren't just removing me, they were trying to destroy everything I'd built. My name, my future, my entire career. Chapter 3, her name comes up. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days. What was the point? Every channel that once tethered me to my career, email, Slack, server access, had gone dark. I wasn't on leave. I wasn't on vacation. I was something else entirely, a liability. On the morning of day 3, my phone lit up with a text from someone I hadn't heard from in over a year. Marcus Lane. Former DevOps manager. Transferred to another division out west. You okay? Heard about the access breach. People are saying Harper went to legal. I stared at the message for a long time. Harper. We'd worked on a few optimization projects together. She was sharp, confident, too ambitious for her current title. A little territorial. And a little too personal, if I'm being honest. A few months ago, she started bringing me coffee in the mornings, the kind with my name spelled correctly. She'd hover at my desk. Ask if I wanted to grab a drink after work. At first, I thought she was just being friendly. Then it stopped being friendly. And I'd said no. Politely. Professionally. But it was still no. She backed off. Went cold. Barely spoke to me after that. I didn't think much of it at the time. Office awkwardness was part of the job. People moved on. But now? She'd gone to legal? I replied carefully. What exactly are they saying? Marcus answered within seconds. That she found you logged into the analytics sandbox late at night. Said you were accessing performance models without clearance. A slow, sour burn crept up the back of my throat. That wasn't just a rumor. That was a planted narrative. And she was at the center of it. I stood in the middle of my apartment, turning in slow circles, as if expecting someone to pop out and shout gotcha. But no one did. Just the quiet hum of a fridge and the distant city noise from 4 stories below. I opened my laptop out of habit, instinct driving my hands. Of course, I was still locked out of everything company-related. But I pulled up our old project logs, ones I had saved locally. I searched for Harper's name. I scrolled through Slack screenshots, meeting notes, timestamps. She'd been there every time I updated those systems. She had access. Same privileges as I did. And now she was acting like a whistleblower? I started a folder. Labeled it, contingency. Because something told me, this was only the beginning. This wasn't just professional sabotage. This was personal. And it was strategic. Chapter 4, when I said no. It didn't happen just once. The first time she asked me out, it was over Slack. A Friday evening. She messaged out of nowhere, drinks tonight? I was caught off guard and told her I had plans. I didn't. The second time, she showed up at my desk with coffee. Figured you could use a break, she said, placing it beside my keyboard. Her smile lingered longer than it should have. She asked if I ever went to that rooftop wine bar near the station. I said I'd been, then pivoted hard to project timelines. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. After that, the invites became less subtle. More confident. Casual suggestions dropped in meetings, follow-ups masked as banter. You and I should talk over dinner sometime, off the clock. And I always said no. Not cruelly. Not coldly. Just clearly. The truth was, I never dated coworkers. I'd seen too many people blow up their careers for a few months of office chemistry. But with Harper, it was more than that. Something about her felt off. Not unkind. Not unstable. Just calculated. Like everything she did was part of a longer game. Every compliment felt a beat too rehearsed. Every joke landed like it had been tested first. She was brilliant. Respected. But there was a sharpness beneath the charm that never fully sat right with me. I couldn't explain it, just a gut feeling. And I've learned not to ignore those. She didn't take it well. At first, she just stopped engaging. Then she stopped replying. Then the critiques started. Code reviews with sarcastic comments. Project notes rewritten without notice. Once, she accidentally left me off an important status update that led to a scheduling delay. But the real shift came when I confronted her, politely, and asked if something was wrong. Her response? "You should be careful how you interpret attention, Matt. Not everyone wants something from you." After that, she was ice. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was deliberate. Calculated. The way she maneuvered meetings, subtly questioned my process in front of others, created doubt without leaving a footprint. I should have documented it. I should have said something. But I didn't want to make it worse. I thought it would blow over. Until 2 weeks before the breach. She passed by my desk without a word, then stopped. Turned back. "You always think you're the smartest guy in the room, don't you?" There was no smile this time. Just a long, flat stare. And in that moment, I realized. She wasn't done with me. She was just getting started. Chapter 5, Pattern Recognition. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there staring at the ceiling, the memory of her voice playing over and over. "You always think you're the smartest guy in the room." It wasn't a throwaway line. It was a trigger. A fuse she'd lit weeks ago. By morning, I was back at my desk, not the office one, the makeshift setup in my apartment, digging. Every system we'd worked on together. Every overlapping commit. Every tool with shared access. I combed through old Git logs, calendar invites, Slack archives. I wasn't looking for proof yet. I was looking for patterns. And they were there. Subtle at first. She always timed her edits close to mine. Not overlapping, close. Like she was watching the gaps. Every shared file? She had touched it within 12 hours of me. Every permission change? Within a window of my commits. Then there were the late-night logins. I pulled local metadata from a sandbox project we had cloned during a testing sprint 3 quarters ago. Buried in the logs was something strange, a session opened at 2:12 a.m. on a Sunday. It was tagged to my username, but the IP didn't match my apartment or even my phone tether. The location pinged from across town. Midtown. I hadn't been in Midtown in months. Someone had spoofed my credentials. I pulled the metadata and exported it. Tagged it. Backed it up twice. Then I opened the folder I'd labeled contingency. I added a subfolder, Ghost Sessions. It wasn't a smoking gun. Not yet. But it was enough to start forming a case. Harper hadn't just built a lie, she'd been laying the groundwork for months. Watching. Tracking. Inserting herself into every project that could be weaponized later. And now she'd chosen her moment to strike. But she made one mistake. She underestimated how well I know my own footprints. And she was sloppy with hers. Chapter 6, Ghost Access. The next clue didn't come from me, it came from Devon. He was a systems architect who used to be on my team before he moved over to infrastructure. We weren't close, but we respected each other's work. I hadn't contacted him since the lockout, but apparently, he'd been watching from the sidelines. His email was short. No subject line. Just a zip file and a sentence. "You didn't log in from Midtown." I opened it. Inside was a raw export of system logs from the proxy layer of Tech's internal network, something only infrastructure had access to. It showed what I suspected. My account had been accessed using a remote login tunnel. Not from company VPN, not from my home IP, and definitely not through proper channels. It was ghost access. Meaning, someone had used stolen credentials and routed through a masked IP that mimicked Tech's core access environment. But there were flaws. The browser string wasn't mine. The login timing didn't match my calendar. And the session accessed a staging archive that only 2 people besides me even knew existed. One of them was Harper. I messaged Devin directly. No pleasantries. Where did you get this? He replied. Call it a quiet favor. I don't like dirty games. And I definitely don't like when good engineers get nuked for someone else's ambition. I stared at the screen. Devin had always been neutral. Apolitical. For him to send this? That meant people were starting to question the official story. I added the proxy logs to my contingency folder. Subfolder, Midtown Tunnel. I was getting closer. But now I knew something else. Harper hadn't just framed me. She had help. And whoever it was had access to systems most people didn't even know existed. Chapter 7, One Tiny Mistake. It happened while I was scrubbing metadata from an old project archive. Something I wasn't even supposed to have access to anymore, but a backup drive on my home rig had synced the full directory months ago. I'd nearly forgotten it existed. Inside a version folder labeled Q4_benchmark_rev final, there was a single unencrypted Word doc. It didn't belong there. The naming convention was wrong. The timestamp was off by a few minutes from the rest of the files. And it hadn't been touched in months. Curious, I opened it. It wasn't code. It wasn't analysis. It was a draft email, addressed to our external PR rep, written in Harper's exact tone. Formal. Polished. Self-congratulatory. The subject line read, Narrative Preparation, Breach Communication. The body was worse. Pending the final findings from legal, I believe we should move forward with the public integrity narrative. I'm willing to position myself as the whistleblower who uncovered the breach, so long as comms emphasize leadership gaps and insufficient internal checks. This could also serve as an opportunity to highlight my promotion readiness. My blood ran cold. She was planning it. Pre-writing it. Drafting her hero arc in advance. And she'd accidentally saved it in a shared archive, maybe just once, for a moment, long enough for the backup to catch it. I copied the file to my desktop. Opened my contingency folder. Subfolder, Hero Draft. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling a shift deep in my gut. This wasn't about me anymore. Not really. It was about how far someone would go to rewrite the story, and who they'd be willing to destroy to make themselves look clean. She was building a legacy, on the ashes of mine. Chapter 8, Building the Counterattack. It wasn't enough to have suspicions. Or even Deming files. If I wanted this to hold, to really hold, I needed to build a case that would survive legal scrutiny. That meant timelines, metadata, witnesses, motive. So I started from the top. I made a list of everyone who'd had admin-level access to the systems where the breach occurred. Cross-referenced it with system logs Devin had quietly sent me, along with a few I'd retrieved from my own backups. I diagrammed login sessions. Marked anomalies. Every time Harper's activity pinged near mine, I flagged it. I compiled a timeline that showed how she'd begun infiltrating shared workspaces months before the breach. Always subtle. Always within policy. But always just enough to create ambiguity. Then I added motive, her promotion track. She'd been passed over the previous cycle. Rumor had it the board was split. Someone like Harper didn't take that well. I built the packet over the course of 3 nights. Slept maybe 5 hours total. Each piece I uncovered only made me more focused. More clear. By the end of the 3rd night, I had a log of the Midtown Ghost session and its IP trace. Harper's early edits to the analytics pipeline. The whistleblower draft. Her Slack timestamps aligning with deletion requests on my branches. All timestamped. Archived. Linked. I called Owen Cho. Attorney. Quiet. Clinical. He'd helped a friend of mine through a wrongful termination suit years ago. We met at a diner in Koreatown. I handed him the drive. Let him read everything. He didn't say much, just nodded as he clicked through each file. After 40 minutes, he finally looked up and said, "You're not just fighting to clear your name, Matt. You're about to take down a rising star. You ready for that?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. Because I wasn't just proving I didn't do it. I was about to prove exactly who did. Chapter 9, The Confrontation. It was strange walking back into that building. Technically, I wasn't reinstated. This was a formal internal hearing, company counsel, HR, legal, and Harper. I was allowed to attend with representation. Owen came with me, a silver laptop case in one hand, unbothered and calm in a way that made everyone else seem nervous by default. They booked a glass conference room on the executive floor. The kind of space where people usually got promoted. Today, someone was about to get exposed. Harper was already seated when I walked in. Her blazer was tailored, her posture sharp. She didn't look at me. Not even a flick of the eyes. Her attorney, a woman named Strauss, was flipping through papers but kept glancing my way like I was a grenade waiting to go off. We sat. Deborah from HR opened with a summary of the allegations: unauthorized access, breach of company data, suspected misconduct. She referred to it all with clinical distance, as if reading someone else's medical chart. Then it was Harper's turn. I discovered Matthew Dawson's credentials being used to pull analytics reports from restricted archives, she said smoothly. I followed protocol. I escalated to legal. Polished. Practiced. Like she was narrating her highlight reel. Strauss leaned in. Ms. Price also directly witnessed Mr. Dawson accessing sensitive project files from an unapproved device in the Level 4 workspace. Owen lifted a brow. Directly witnessed? Harper nodded. He was reviewing confidential logs on his phone. I saw it with my own eyes. Owen tilted his head slightly. And you're certain about the time? The exact date and hour? Yes, Harper said without hesitation. It was 3:45 p.m. on the 12th. I remember because I had a calendar hold right after. Interesting, Owen replied evenly. Because according to Mr. Dawson's device metadata and cell provider location data, which we've already submitted to legal, his phone was in another zip code entirely. Specifically, a bookstore in Parkhurst, with 2 ATM pings to verify the time. He clicked his laptop. A screenshot appeared on the shared monitor, timestamped GPS logs, carrier tower pings, and purchase data from that afternoon. Silence rippled through the room. If she witnessed him in the Level 4 workspace, Owen continued, she'd need to explain how he was simultaneously purchasing a paperback on neuroeconomics across the city. Strauss shifted uncomfortably. Harper's face flushed. Owen turned back to the table. So now we're not just talking about a false accusation. We're talking about perjury within an internal investigation. He let the word hang in the air. Then I spoke. There's more, I said quietly. Her login activity tracks directly alongside mine for months. Her Slack timestamps match file deletions tied to my access path. It's not coincidence. It's choreography. Deborah looked shaken. Strauss tried to pivot, something about misinterpreted logs, permissions overlap, but the room had shifted. This wasn't a defense anymore. It was a takedown. And Harper knew it. I finally looked her in the eyes, and this time, she was the one who looked away. Chapter 10, The Unraveling. The fallout didn't take long. By noon the next day, Harper was summoned to a formal review hearing. The committee included 2 VPs, legal, and HR's director of investigations. No warning. No prep window. Just a calendar invite marked urgent, internal audit testimony. She walked in calm, I was told. But not for long. They began by walking her through a timeline of system access violations tied to her user credentials, access trails layered over my own. Then they presented forensic evidence from my attorney, location data, metadata anomalies, Slack timestamps. Every piece meticulously laid out. When they asked about the draft email to the PR firm, she denied it. Said she didn't recognize the file. Until they showed her the exact timestamp from her company-issued laptop. The file creation. The autosave trail. Even the file name she'd used on another unrelated draft just weeks earlier. Her voice cracked. When asked if anyone helped her stage the breach, she hesitated too long. Said she couldn't recall. They noted it. By the end of the hour, her lawyer had stopped interjecting. There was no counter-narrative left to spin. Within 24 hours, Harper's access was revoked. Her badge deactivated. She was placed on immediate suspension pending further review. But the real unraveling started outside the company's firewall. It began with a post. She published a polished note on LinkedIn, calling herself a casualty of corporate politics. She didn't name me outright, but the implication was clear. She framed the situation as a case of retaliation, an honest employee punished for speaking up about data integrity lapses. Her followers rallied. Comments poured in. Sympathy. Applause. Hashtags. Hashtag women in tech. Hashtag speak truth to power. Hashtag integrity. Over. Comfort. But then came the cracks. A former DevOps engineer commented, "Didn't you lead the project that failed the last audit?" It got hundreds of likes. Another colleague posted anonymously in a private industry Slack, "Pretty rich coming from someone who used to brag about knowing how to adjust the narrative." That message got screenshotted and passed around. Quietly. Relentlessly. By the end of the week, someone leaked her whistleblower draft to an internal watchdog blog. The same one I'd found buried in the backup. The post went viral. Not because of what it said, but because of how perfectly rehearsed it sounded. Too perfect. PR firms began pulling back. A speaking engagement was quietly cancelled. And then legal reached out again, this time, not to me. I didn't post. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. She was spiraling. I'd seen the type before, people who weaponize perception, who build an identity on being the one who tells the truth. Until the truth tells on them. The last message she sent me was one line. "You did this." But I hadn't framed her. I hadn't leaked anything. I hadn't lifted a single finger to ruin her. All I'd done was stop her from ruining me. And she couldn't stand that the story she tried to control had turned into a mirror, one that finally showed everyone who she really was. Chapter 11, The Fallout. The silence after her fall was almost louder than the scandal itself. I thought there might be a call from HR. A written apology. A reinstatement offer. Something formal. Instead, there was a generic email, investigation closed. Clearance restored. No subject line. No apology. Just an automated reset of my credentials. But the real fallout didn't come in the form of keys or badge access. It came in whispers. Inside Innova Tech, word spread fast. People started reaching out, cautiously at first, then more freely. Messages like, "I always thought something felt off about her. She shut me out of my own sandbox 6 months ago. You weren't the first. She tanked Calvin's promotion path, too." People who had stayed quiet started speaking up. Even Devin messaged again. Funny how quickly the narrative flips when the receipts drop. Harper, once positioned for a director-level promotion, was now a cautionary tale. Her LinkedIn went private. Her side projects vanished. Rumors swirled that she'd filed a complaint against the company, but it was quickly dismissed. Then came the final blow, an email from a senior engineer she used to mentor. A short note with a single line, "Just wanted you to know, the board saw everything." I read it twice. Then I sat back, closed my laptop, and exhaled in a way I hadn't in weeks. It wasn't celebration. It wasn't revenge. It was survival. And after everything, that was enough. Sometimes the only justice you get is knowing the lie didn't win. Chapter 12, The Reckoning. 3 weeks later, I got an email from legal. It wasn't about Harper. It was about the system itself. Innova Tech had launched a full audit, not just of Harper's Access history, but of their entire internal security culture. Turns out, she'd exploited more than just my credentials. There were gaps in monitoring, exceptions granted without oversight, and informal networks of influence she used to keep herself protected. They offered me a return package. Quietly generous. Full restoration of my title, back pay, and a seat on the Internal Risk Compliance Task Force. I said no. Not out of pride. Out of clarity. Sometimes you don't go back to the place that almost buried you, even when they ask you to. Instead, I launched something new. A consulting firm focused on digital integrity. My first employees were 3 former engineers from Innova Tech who walked after the scandal. Word spread fast. Within 2 months, we were advising startups on how to prevent the kind of breach that almost destroyed me. Then one morning, I got a message from an unknown address. Subject line, closure? It was Harper. She said she wanted to explain. That it had gotten out of hand. That she never expected it to go that far. That she had felt overlooked, underappreciated, passed over for people who didn't work as hard. So I agreed to meet. A coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground. Public enough to keep things civil. She looked different, smaller somehow. Not physically. Just dimmed. Like the version of herself she'd tried to market had finally short-circuited. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she said again. I was angry. You always had things come easy. People listened to you. And you rejected me. You acted like I didn't matter, like you were above me. She looked at me then, really looked. I just want to know why, she said. Why didn't you want me? Was I not smart enough? Not good enough? I stayed quiet for a moment. Not out of cruelty, just long enough to be sure she really wanted the answer. Why did you even ask me out? I asked. Did you actually like me? Or did you just want someone to validate you? Her mouth opened slightly, then shut. No answer, because for someone who wanted me so badly, you spent an awful lot of time acting like I disgusted you. I let her speak. Let her circle her justifications. When she finally paused, she looked up with a flicker of the old sharpness in her eyes. I did like you, she said. But not in the way you probably think. I liked what you represented. The way people listened to you. The way you didn't seem to need approval to succeed. I wanted to be close to that. I thought maybe being with you would give me some of that weight. She blinked, as if surprised by her own honesty. But when you said no, she added, it felt like you'd seen something in me I was trying to hide. And I hated you for it. You didn't just try to ruin my career, Harper. You tried to rewrite reality. And when that didn't work, you weaponized sympathy. Not because you were weak. But because you thought it would work. She didn't deny it. I stood to leave. You didn't lose because I fought back. You lost because somewhere deep down, you knew the version of yourself you were selling wasn't real. I left her there, still holding her coffee, staring at a version of me she could no longer reach. I didn't respond. Because what she never understood was that ambition isn't dangerous. But weaponized resentment is. And in the end, the only thing she built was the bomb she tripped over. Some endings don't need fireworks. Just the silence that follows when the truth is finally louder than the lie.
Thanks so much for watching. If you love a good revenge story, or if you've ever dreamed of getting the last word without saying much at all, you're in the right place. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new savage ending. Because around here, karma always hits different.